Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Trans-en-Provence Case, the UFO landing with physical evidence that scientists could not explain. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On January 8, 1981, at approximately 5:00 p.m., a retired engineer named Renato Niccolai was working in his garden on his property in Trans-en-Provence, in the Var department of southern France, when he heard a whistling sound and observed a lead-gray disc-shaped object descend into the lower portion of his terrace, approximately 50 meters away. The object, which he estimated at about 5 meters in diameter and 1 meter in height, rested on the ground for approximately 30 seconds before ascending rapidly with a whistling sound, leaving a clear circular impression in the soil. Niccolai called the local gendarmerie. What happened next is what makes Trans-en-Provence unique in the world's UFO case files. The gendarmerie arrived and collected soil samples from the landing site. These samples were sent to the Groupement d'études et informations sur les phénomènes aérospatiaux non-identifies, GEPAN, the official French government agency established in 1977 to scientifically investigate UFO reports. GEPAN, which is unique in the world as a genuine government scientific body with a mandate to investigate UFO cases rigorously, conducted one of the most thorough scientific analyses ever performed on a physical UFO trace. The GEPAN report, published in 1983, found something that could not be easily explained. The soil and plant material from the landing site showed evidence of high-temperature heating, mechanical compression, and chemical changes that were consistent with a heavy object generating significant heat. Wild alfalfa growing in the area showed cellular biochemical changes, specifically a significant reduction in the concentration of certain photosynthetic pigments, consistent with exposure to intense electromagnetic radiation or microwaves. The changes were detected in a pattern radiating outward from the central landing circle, with intensity decreasing with distance. These findings were replicated by an independent laboratory. The Trans-en-Provence case is considered by many UFO researchers to be the single best evidenced physical trace UFO case in the world. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we go further, if you are finding this investigation compelling, please take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and share it with someone who loves a good historical mystery. If you are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. If you found us through Facebook, tap follow on our page. It takes just a few seconds, and it genuinely helps us keep making these documentaries. Now, let us get back to the investigation. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Human perception is fallible. This is not an insult, it is neuroscience. The brain does not passively record reality, it actively constructs it, filling gaps with expectation, inferring causes from insufficient data, and storing memories that are reshaped by subsequent experience. Eyewitness testimony is the weakest form of courtroom evidence precisely because what people see and what actually happened frequently diverge. Sound can cause visual hallucinations. Infrasound at specific frequencies can produce feelings of dread, the sensation of a presence, and even visual disturbances. Sleep deprivation, stress, and hypoxia can generate vivid experiences indistinguishable from waking reality. All of this is relevant when evaluating modern mysteries. Many apparently anomalous experiences have prosaic explanations rooted in human neurology, temporal lobe activity, hypnagogic hallucinations, shared social expectation shaping perception. A willingness to consider these explanations is not dismissiveness, it is intellectual hygiene. The brain is capable of generating extraordinarily convincing experiences that have no external cause, and yet, the perceptual explanation has its limits. It cannot account for physical evidence, radiation burns, landing traces, electromagnetic interference on electronic equipment, or anomalous readings on calibrated instruments. When multiple independent witnesses, separated by distance, report identical details, mass hallucination strains credulity. When physical measurements corroborate subjective experience, the neurological explanation is insufficient. These are the cases that demand another look. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Trans-en-Provence case, the UFO landing with physical evidence that scientists could not explain, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Renato Niccolai, the sole witness to the Trans-en-Provence landing, was a 55-year-old retired engineer at the time of the incident. He had no prior history of UFO interest or claims and reportedly had little specific interest in the topic. His account of the event was consistent across multiple interviews over subsequent years. He described the object as roughly the shape of two stacked plates, flat on the bottom, hemispherical on the top, with two small circular protrusions at its base, possibly landing legs. The object's surface appeared smooth and metallic, lead gray in color. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered GEPAN, Groupement d'études et informations sur les phénomènes aérospatiaux non-identifies, now called GEPAN, was established in 1977 within the French space agency CNES, Centre National d'études spatiales, with a specific mandate to scientifically investigate UFO reports. It is funded by the French government and staffed by professional scientists. GEPAN establishment and continued operation reflects the French government's position that some UFO reports require serious scientific investigation, a position more explicit than that of any other major government. The Trans-en-Provence case was one of GEPAN's first major investigations. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The physical trace left by the object consisted of a dark ring approximately 4 meters in diameter in the soil of Niccolai's terrace, with a central disturbed area and a pattern of marks that could correspond to 4 landing pads or legs. The gendarmerie collected soil samples, both from within the ring and from undisturbed comparison areas. They also collected samples of wild alfalfa, Medicago sativa, growing in the vicinity, both from within the affected zone and from unaffected comparison areas at greater distances. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the GEPAN analysis of the Trans-en-Provence samples, conducted by scientists at the SNEP Institute and the Institut National de la Recherche Agronomique INRA, found the following. The soil within the landing ring had been subjected to high temperature, above 600 degrees C, based on thermoluminescence testing and mechanical pressure. The mineral composition of the soil showed changes consistent with high temperature treatment, and the wild alfalfa from the landing area showed a 30–50% reduction in chlorophyll concentration and significant changes in the levels of beta-carotene and other photosynthetic pigments, consistent with exposure to intense electromagnetic radiation in the microwave range. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the GEPAN report concluded in its official summary that the physical and chemical changes observed at the Trans-en-Provence site were consistent with the landing of a heavy, hot object that generated intense electromagnetic radiation, and that no conventional explanation for the pattern and nature of the effects could be identified. The report was notable for its scientific rigor and for the explicit statement by government scientists that the evidence was genuine and anomalous. The report was not a claim of extraterrestrial contact, but a straightforward scientific statement that something physically real and unexplained had occurred. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. James Vallée, one of the world's most respected UFO researchers. He was the inspiration for the character of the French scientist Lacombe in Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, conducted an independent review of the Trans-en-Provence case and concluded it was the best evidenced physical trace UFO car. See in history, Vallée's assessment, combined with the GEPAN official scientific report, gives the case a level of credibility that most UFO incidents do not have. Vallée's analysis appears in several of his books, including Confrontations, 1990. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Trans-en-Provence case, the UFO landing with physical evidence that scientists could not explain. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the physical craft landing theory holds that the Trans-en-Provence trace was produced by a genuine physical craft of unknown origin, whether extraterrestrial, human-made classified technology, or something else, that actually landed, rested on the ground briefly, and departed. The physical evidence is consistent with a metallic object of significant mass that generated high temperatures and electromagnetic radiation during its brief ground contact. Under this theory, the anomalous nature of the evidence reflects the anomalous nature of the propulsion and power systems of the craft that produced it. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the classified technology theory proposes that the object Niccolai observed was a classified French, American, or Soviet military drone or experimental aircraft being tested in southern France in January 1981. France's military test and training areas in the Var department make this geographically plausible. The intense heat and electromagnetic effects would reflect a novel propulsion system under test. The subsequent GEPAN investigation, from this perspective, might have been a genuine scientific inquiry into a classified program's effects, or might have been an investigation that found evidence of something the investigators were not authorized to identify. This theory is controversial and rightly so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the novel atmospheric or geophysical phenomenon theory suggests that the Trans-en-Provence trace was produced not by a craft, but by a natural electrical or atmospheric phenomenon, a particularly intense ball lightning event, a localized plasma formation, or a geophysical discharge from subsurface stress. These phenomena can generate high temperatures and electromagnetic radiation. The main challenge for this theory is that natural electrical and plasma phenomena do not typically produce the sharply delineated circular traces with landing pad patterns described at Trans-en-Provence, nor do they typically last long enough to be observed as a static object hovering briefly before departing. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Trans-en-Provence case, the UFO landing with physical evidence that scientists could not explain, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the official GEPAN report, Technical Note No. 16, 1983, is the primary evidence for the Trans-en-Provence case. The report documents the gendarmerie investigation, the collection methodology for samples, the analytical methods used by the laboratories, and the specific findings for each sample type. The report's conclusions that the physical changes in soil and plant material are genuine, anomalous, and consistent with a heavy, hot, electromagnetically active object, constitute the most rigorously documented physical evidence in any UFO case in the public record. The report is available through CNES/JPAN Public Archives. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. investigators have documented the independent laboratory replication of the biochemical findings provides scientific corroboration. The INRA laboratory's finding of reduced photosynthetic pigment concentration in the alfalfa samples was replicated by an independent analysis, ruling out laboratory error. The consistent pattern of effects, strongest near the center, decreasing with distance, is specifically consistent with a point source of electromagnetic radiation near the landing site center, providing directional evidence for a specific source of the radiation. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed Niccolai's consistent and detailed testimony given to the gendarmerie immediately after the event and maintained across subsequent interviews provides the witness context for interpreting the physical evidence. The precision of his description, the craft's approximate dimensions, its shape, its color, the sound it made, its behavior, and the consistency of these details across interviews is consistent with a genuine observation rather than a fabricated account. The proximity of the observation, approximately 50 meters, in daylight conditions, means the witness had an adequate view of the object. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Trans-en-Provence case, the UFO landing with physical evidence that scientists could not explain. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Trans-en-Provence case remains the gold standard for physical trace UFO evidence and is routinely cited in both scientific UFO research and in arguments for serious government investigation of UFO reports. GEPAN, the successor to GEPAN, maintains an online database of French UFO cases, including Trans-en-Provence, and the original GEPAN report is publicly available. France's tradition of official, scientifically rigorous UFO investigation, initiated with GEPAN establishment in 1977, continues through GEPAN, which currently processes approximately 100 UFO reports per year. The Trans-en-Provence case has influenced international discussions about how governments should handle UFO reports. The French model, a permanent scientific agency with resources to conduct rapid field investigation, collect physical samples, and analyze them in accredited laboratories, has been cited as the appropriate model for UFO investigation by researchers who argue that the current ad hoc approach of most governments wastes evidence through delayed response. In 2022, when the United States Congress mandated establishment of the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, ARO, with a broader mandate, some researchers cited the French GEPAN model as the appropriate precedent. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Trans-en-Provence Case, the UFO landing with physical evidence that scientists could not explain from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Trans-en-Provence ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence, presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please help us reach more people. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new documentary. If you are watching on Facebook, tap the follow button on our page to stay connected. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.